On the road to Augusta, we honor the places where history lives, not just in trophies, but in the soil beneath your feet. That's the spirit of McConnell Golf. What began with the preservation of Donald Ross's final design at Raleigh Country Club has grown into the largest owner of premier private clubs in the Southeast. Today, their portfolio spans 17 exceptional properties across the Carolinas, Tennessee, and Virginia, featuring courses designed by legends like Ross, Pete Dye, Tom Fazio, Arnold Palmer, and Greg Norman. And consider this: Sedgefield Country Club, home of the PGA Tour's Wyndham Championship, is also where the Atlantic Coast Conference was founded back in 1953. That's not just golf history, that's sports history. McConnell Golf lives by a simple motto: pure golf for the true golfer. Championship conditions, remarkable hospitality, and a family-focused club lifestyle that extends well beyond the fairways. To learn more about this extraordinary collection of clubs, visit mcconnellgolf.com. McConnell Golf, where championship golf meets lasting tradition. There are tournaments, and then there is Augusta. This April, for the 90th time, the world turns its eyes to Bobby Jones's vision, a stage where legends are crowned and new names begin to rise. From North Carolina to golf's most sacred ground, McConnell Golf proudly presents Road to Augusta on the North Carolina Sports Network. Episode 2, Augusta, Now and Then, featuring 2025 U.S. Junior Amateur Champion Hamilton Coleman, one of the game's brightest young stars. 2025 U.S. Amateur Champion Mason Howell, now stepping onto golf's grandest stage. And veteran golf journalist and Augusta historian David Westin, known to many as The Ghost, a lifelong chronicler of the Masters. The past, the present, and the ties that connect them. Two champions, two defining victories, one road that leads to Augusta. 2025 United States Junior Amateur Champion Hamilton Coleman. 2025 United States Amateur Champion Mason Howell. Soon to be roommates at the University of Georgia, young champions preparing for the next chapter together. From junior dominance to amateur supremacy, these are not just rising stars. They are the future of American golf for decades to come. This is where legacy begins. McConnell Golf presents Road to Augusta on the North Carolina Sports Network. Here's Ward Clayton.
We've got the U.S. Junior Amateur Champion and the U.S. Amateur Champion with us today. My first question for both of you guys is, where is the trophy that you each won?
Yeah, I have it like right. We have a walkway when we walk in the house, and I put it on that. I have some other trophies on that area too. So
yeah, right now it's actually out in Phoenix, but when it's at the house, I normally eat breakfast next to it in the kitchen, just so I can see it every day.
Who's the coolest person that's contacted you or made connections with you after you won the U.S. Junior Amateur?
I haven't had many like cool PGA Tour players. Mason might be able to go first. Let me think for a second.
Okay, go ahead.
I've had the honor, honestly, to talk to Ben Crenshaw just about some things, and yeah, he's a great mentor and great to be in touch with.
Give you any putting tips?
Yeah, he's I've talked to him a little bit about how I'm gonna try to plot my way around that course in Augusta.
Oh yeah, well he's got a pretty sound caddy there too, Carl Jackson, who we're going to have on this show. And so if you ever get an opportunity to speak to Mr. Jackson, you'll get a wealth of knowledge there.
Yeah, exactly.
And I know you got your man who's caddying for you. That'd be a great resource there too. So
it sure would be.
Fantastic. Okay, Hamilton. It could be somebody locally in Augusta too. So
I think one cool person was the owner of Bettinardi, Sam Bettinardi. he reached out to me and gave me a congrats, which is cool because I've used their putters for a while. So that was cool to hear from him.
So here's a stat for both of you guys from the USGA. They cannot find any time in history where the reigning U.S. junior amateur and the reigning U.S. amateur champion were going to the same college and especially room together. So you guys have got that going. So maybe tell us how you guys met and how you became friends and decided that rooming together would be a good idea.
First time I met Mason, I played with him in Gainesville, Florida for a U.S. junior amateur qualifier. I think he ended up qualifying and I didn't play very well. And then the second time when we really got to know each other better was the Future Masters. I think we were 12 or 13. I had a 3-shot lead going into the final round and Mason beat me. So a little salty about that. But,
Yep.
but yeah, we've had a lot of good battles on the golf course. And, obviously, with golf, you kind of end up hanging out with the same people over and over again, and they kind of become my family. So, we've obviously traveled a lot to the same tournaments and played a lot of practice rounds. So it's been cool.
Cool.
Yeah, and I mean, kind of like Hamilton said, you see a lot of the same people, and Hamilton and I, we're going to be good buddies over time. And so anytime we're playing in the same tournament, we'll try to hook up a practice round together or something like that. But when it comes to University of Georgia, I think that was both of our dream schools. And when we got the opportunity, we jumped on it. And so we'll be roommates together, and we'll have a third, Drew Woolworth from Lake Oswego, Oregon, who's a great player himself. And yeah, so we're looking forward to it. The three of us, we're hoping to bring some good golf and some rings and titles to the University of Georgia.
I hear you. So have you guys ever roomed together on the road at any amateur events or anything like that?
I do not think so. I don't think we ever have. We have been like teammates and teams events, but we haven't roomed together yet. The first time it might be when we're in Athens.
Okay. All right.
Well, we might have an opportunity at Sage Valley, the Junior Invitational.
Yeah, this year, actually coming up in March.
Yeah, so we get you stay in one of their cabins for the week.
Okay.
With other players. So if that lines up, we might get to. But
Awesome. So either one of you guys, night owls, early risers, what's the situation there regarding sleeping patterns here?
I would like to say I like get up early, get moving, get the day started. But honestly, it just kind of depends on what's going on, what I'm doing. I love sleeping in too. So, but if an early alarm goes off, it doesn't bother me at all.
Cool.
I'm kind of the same way. I'm kind of a morning person. That's where I get a lot of my stuff done. I mean, with school, obviously, you can't do much in the morning, but on the weekends, a lot of the time, I get my work in the morning.
All right, cool. Good deal. Well, I'm glad that nobody's going to be up late and somebody's getting up early, so you get along in that way. That's good.
No
all
problem.
right, Mason. Now, I know that you've been to Augusta and played it. Sort of take me through that first thing, what it was like. And I really want to hear not only your experience, but taking your dad with you. That was probably like really just revealing for him. Just take me through the steps on what happened there and what that was about.
Yeah, so we got the opportunity to go with a member, which we're super thankful and grateful for. And yeah, the second we stepped foot on property, it was like we were in heaven. I mean, there's nothing missing on the entire property. It's perfect. Then me and my dad walking the fairways together, we just had an absolute blast. It just didn't feel real, and we didn't really care what our scores were. We were just grateful to be there and having fun, and also having my coach with me as well. But yeah, I mean, we played that Saturday and Sunday, and my dad made 2 birdies on that Sunday and broke 90, so he was on top of the world. But yeah, it was a lot of fun, and that was a weekend I won't forget.
What was your highlight?
I would say the second day I birdied 18, and it was about 50 degrees and blowing about 30. So I had about 210 yards in and made birdie. So I'd say that was my highlight of the 2 rounds.
Awesome. So had you been to the tournament before as a spectator?
I've been in 2019 on Wednesday to a practice round in the par 3 contest.
Okay. What's the biggest difference you found actually teeing up on the golf course? What was your perception of what it played like?
Just seeing it through videos and seeing it online. I mean, I would say the course is a lot tighter than it looks on television, and than you might see in different videos. And then I'd also say there's way more undulation on the property than it looks like watching it on TV or anything else like that. So, I mean, it's hard. It's a hard golf course. So it'll be a good test.
No doubt. So any plans for the week? You always ask amateurs, when you're going to stay in the crow's nest, who you're going to play practice rounds with, who's your par 3 caddy, on and on like that. Maybe give us an idea of what your schedule will be like there.
Yeah, so I'll get there on Saturday, register whenever it opens on Saturday. Kind of settle into the week, go out there on Sunday, practice, play a practice round after a drive trip and putt, maybe watch that a little bit. Monday, kind of go through the motions, play a practice round, stay in the crow's nest that night after the amateur dinner. And then Tuesday, kind of same deal, go around. It'll be a good practice day. Let's see, on Wednesday, I will probably play a little bit of golf in the morning. I have my sister on the bag during the par 3 contest.
Awesome.
That'll be awesome.
Yeah.
And then Wednesday afternoon, just going to kind of wind down. I think I'm going to go with my girlfriend to the cocktail party. Even though we're underage, we'll just mingle around.
Yeah.
And just experience that and just kind of take the weekend before it all gets started and things get serious on Thursday.
Pretty cool that you get your pairing with the defending champion too, with Rory McIlroy. That's what are your thoughts about having that particular pairing?
Yeah, it'll be awesome. That was one of my idols growing up. My favorite player. He's kind of like the Tiger of Hamilton and I's time, so it'll be special.
All right. Now, Hamilton, I'm asking you a similar question. As an Augustan, what advice would you give your pal here about playing Augusta National since you grew up in Augusta? Any particular advice you've given him or something you think about that you ought to pass along?
I'd say definitely try to find your quiet spaces around Augusta, because it's obviously it feels like the whole world is in town. So if you go to the wrong restaurant, sometimes you'll probably never be able to leave. That, and then I'm sure he's heard this a million times, but enjoy it all. There's probably a million different golfers on the planet that would love to trade places with them. So, take it.
No doubt. Here's a shout out to any Augusta National members who live in Augusta who might want to give the U.S. Junior Amateur Champion a chance to play Augusta National. Here he is right here. You probably won't have a hard time finding him. So tell folks what you're going to be doing during Masters Week, if you don't mind. Hamilton, what's your job going to be as a volunteer out there?
So I'll be working the driving range, which is really cool. You'll see us standing behind the players while they're hitting range balls. And, we kind of clean up their area after they're done. And then we'll do the short game area, which is really cool. You can kind of get close and, just rake the bunkers, sweep the balls off the green, stuff like that. And then washing and sorting the golf balls. That's kind of our job, but it's really cool. I've gotten to have some cool interactions with players over the past couple of years. And then with Mason being there this year, it's going to be really cool. I'm not supposed to talk to the players, but maybe
I'm definitely going to come over and talk to Hamilton. So
that's cool. That's good. That's awesome. So Mason, have you got outfits picked out for every day? Have you gone to that extreme, or are you just
no, not even. I'm just focused on whatever's coming up next, and whenever that tournament comes along, we'll try to be as ready as I can for it. But I'm just focusing for next time I tee it up in the tournament.
I got you. So tell me, when you played that practice round at Augusta, did you take an Augusta caddy, right?
I did.
Is your guy, maybe talk about your guy who's going to caddy for you, and if he's going to interact with anybody at Augusta to sort of get some skinny on playing the golf course?
Yeah, I'm going to take Jimmy Gillum with me to caddy for me. He caddied for me at Oakmont. He caddied for me at the Olympic Club. He caddied for me at the RSM, and most recently at the Jones Cup. So we've got a good connection. And yeah, whenever I take some of my visits to go and play, I have to use a course caddy, but I can bring one non-playing guest. So Jimmy will be walking with us, picking the caddy's brain and kind of mapping them out himself. So he'll get a good chance to look and see the golf course and pick the local caddy's brain. So.
Now, he's not only your caddy, isn't he your short game instructor or something like that too?
He is my short game instructor as well as my high school golf coach.
Ah, okay. All right. So he's a pretty decent player too. How much golf have you played with him?
Oh, I play with him probably 3 to 4 times a week. If he can sneak off work, yeah, he's a really good player. We'll go out there. We'll have some good matches. I definitely think if he wanted to go out there and make a run and go in pro, he would have a really good chance. He's that caliber of a talent, but for somebody that doesn't practice, he is a dang good player.
So, Hamilton, give folks here a sense for being an Augustan, what the golf landscape is like there. You know, people that go to Augusta only know about 1 week for the year. What's it like the rest of the year for you and playing golf in Augusta, and just how immersed are you into the golf as a sport, just living in that town?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, as you'd expect, there's a very deep appreciation for golf. I'm out at Westlake Country Club, and there's an incredible amount of junior players that I get to play with, and pretty much all of that stems from the course 10 miles down the road. So yeah, and it's cool because even as people that live in Augusta, we all only get to see it just about as much as y'all do. So every time you drive down Washington Road and you get a chance to take that 1 second look down Magnolia Lane, you always take it. But it's just cool. You know, having Augusta's not a massive city or anything, and it's just cool to have that super private area that it kind of has this mystique about it, you know, right down the road. But yeah, everybody here appreciates the game, knows the history of the game, and you know, it's been great for me because you know there's a lot of good players around that I can pick their brain and compete with.
Along with you guys winning these titles, I think the landscape has changed a little bit in amateur athletics. You know, college football and college basketball gets a lot of attention, but maybe each one of you give me an example of name, image, and likeness that you've been able to take advantage of. Just Hamilton, go first. What has that offered for you to be able to take advantage of?
Like I have a sponsorship with Club Car, which has been awesome. They gave me a free golf cart, which is really cool. And they have their Corn Ferry event in March that I might potentially have a better chance of getting a sponsors exemption into. So that's my main goal out of this, is to get more playing opportunities and make it easier to play because the travel and everything can get expensive. But yeah, so having that opportunity to, you know, I'm not out here to get rich or anything, but to make it easier to play on the highest levels of amateur golf, it's a really cool opportunity.
So they gave you your own golf cart. Did they bring it to your house, or how did that transpire?
So they surprised me on the golf course. I was practicing and they just kind of pulled up to the range with it, which was really cool. But I love it. I drive it all the time.
Awesome. All right, Mason, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't necessarily call it that we're taking advantage of the name and image and likeness. I would say more of just we're creating partnerships and long-term partnerships and friendships with people that can help us continue our consistent pursuit of playing on the PGA Tour and playing professional golf. And I think these companies or these people that step in and help us along our journey, it's definitely a big help, and it's definitely changed a lot in terms of golf. But yeah, I think it's a good thing. I think it's positive. It helps, like, going on these outings, playing with different people. You know, you really get to make connections, and you know that's kind of how I was able to play Augusta National. So yeah, I definitely think it's a good thing for the game, but there's different ways you have to look at it.
Name who your sponsors are, if you don't mind. This is so everybody knows.
Yeah, I mean, for 2026, I'm with Ping, Joy, Titleist, Huntington Bank, and Holderness and Bourne.
And your dad referred that you went out to Arizona last week or a couple of weeks ago and spent a few days there. What did that entail when you were at Ping? Were they fitting you? Were you trying their equipment, seeing their buildings? What was going on there?
Yeah, I go out to Ping every year in January. I've been going for like the past 5 years. I go check my clubs, check to see if I need to change anything, do anything different. and then go out and play golf course. I went and or played golf. I played golf with my Ping rep Jeff Brown and two other members of the Ping family, and they're just everybody's awesome out there, and it's really special. And that's Scottsdale, Arizona is a perfect place this time of year.
And that's where the trophy is now, right?
The trophy is out there right now. It should be getting shipped back out today, so I should have it back this week.
Let's hope so. I agree. Awesome. All right. I'm going to end this up with a couple quick hitters here. Okay. Mason, favorite and least favorite holes at Augusta National. It's in the time.
Favorite and least favorite.
Yep.
Oh, I don't know that I could say a least favorite, but I'd definitely say hole 12 favorite.
How about the most difficult hole you faced?
Most difficult. Okay. When I was there, probably hole 11. Caught it into the wind both days, and it just becomes a different beast. And then I'd say favorite hole, probably hole 12.
Okay. If you were limited to buying one thing in the Masters Pro Shop, what would that be?
Probably a belt. I'm big on collecting belts.
Okay. All right. Gotcha. Pimento cheese or egg salad?
Neither. The barbecue sandwich is better.
Okay. All right. Hamilton, I got a little wider range for you here, man.
Okay.
3 favorite courses to play in Augusta, and you can't say Augusta National.
Can we branch out to Aiken?
Yeah, definitely.
I'll say Palmetto Golf Club. Then I'll go Champions Retreat, Country Club.
Okay, gotcha. All right. 3 favorite places to eat in Augusta.
My favorite is Ray's Coastal Cafe, kind of a smaller restaurant. French Market Grill. I mean, it's kind of a classic, but
Yeah.
one of my favorites, more Cajun style. And then there's a lot of good Mexican restaurants. I don't know what it is, but there's like 10 or 15 in this area that are really
Gotcha.
good. So pretty much any Mexican restaurant.
All right. Same question I asked Mason. Favorite and least favorite holes at Augusta National.
I'd say favorite for me is 13. You know, we saw what happened last year in the final round with Rory and everything.
Yeah.
So I'd say 13, 12 is obviously a close second, but I'd say least favorite, probably like hole 4. It's just, you know, kind of a like 240-yard par 3 and just kind of try to make a par. So I guess, but it's still not a bad hole. It's just a little bit less exciting than the others. But you know, there's really no bad hole or unfair hole out there.
No, I agree. Okay. Same question I asked Mason. If you could buy only one thing in the golf shop there, what would it be?
I'd say a belt too. I like collecting belts.
Okay.
And have some good options there.
Okay. Pimento cheese or egg salad?
I don't really like either, but if I had to choose one, I'd probably say pimento cheese.
Okay. All right. Since you've been going to the Masters as a work as a volunteer, but also you're familiar with the place, where's your favorite or your secret place to watch golf at Augusta National? Is there a particular location?
Obviously, 16 is really cool. I was able to watch Rory on 16 on Saturday when he made eagle last year, which was really cool. I'd say hole 7 is a very underrated hole. That's such a cool par 4. And then I also watched Rory hit that shot on 7 on Sunday from the left trees, which is really cool. And then you can kind of watch 8 tee shot, and you're kind of near 15 and 16. So it's kind of like the central point of the golf course. And there's a lot of places you can get from there. So yeah, I'd say 7 is pretty underrated.
Final question for both of you guys. It seems like as somebody who's a golfer, it's pretty surreal that you get to play in the Masters. And your best pal is you're going to be roommates with is playing in the Masters next year. Sort of try to sum up what that experience is you're looking forward to most about that.
I would say, I mean, obviously I'm really looking forward to playing in Augusta, but I'm honestly most looking forward to playing alongside Hamilton when he makes his first major start at Shinnecock Hills this year. Augusta is going to be a lot of fun. It's going to be a fun week for me and my family. But in terms of me watching Hamilton have major success in golf, watching him play at Shinnecock Hills and playing against him, it's going to be awesome for both of us.
There are writers, and then there are witnesses. For decades, he has walked the fairways of Augusta, listened to the hush, felt the Sunday roars rise through the pines. A veteran golf journalist, a trusted chronicler of the Masters, to many simply the Ghost. Today, Ward Clayton sits down with David Westin to explore the history, the legends, and the moments that define golf's most sacred stage. McConnell Golf presents Road to Augusta on the North Carolina Sports Network. Here's Ward Clayton.
So many things we can cover here, but the first thing, I've written a lot about the caddies at Augusta, and they got a lot of nicknames, and so I'm wondering, a lot of folks probably don't know you by David Westin. They probably call you by the Ghost. I'm wondering if you could give us a sense of how that nickname came about.
Sure, it happened at work. I was covering Clemson football. I was a beat writer at the time, and the deal was you had to have a story in the paper every day on your beat. It could be advance, it could be the game story, it could be key matchups, but 7 days a week, even on your days off, you had to have a story in the paper. So I would go to the Clemson press conference. Danny Ford was the coach at the time, and then Ken Hatfield. But I go to it on Tuesday. I get all this information, and then I break it up into the 7 stories I would have to do. And so I didn't want to have to come in on my day off. This was kind of before laptops. So I would go in to work that day, and I'd especially write the stories I would have had to write on my days off. I didn't want to have to do that. So I'd go way in the back of the newsroom. We had these partitions, and hide because I didn't want to be bothered. I was there on my own time.
Yep.
But when you did a story back then, it would pop into the system, and then the guys on the desk would know you were there. So this guy, Robert Nadler, was on the desk that night, and he walked back there. He found me, and he said, "Man, you're just like a ghost." So that stuck because at one point we had like 4 Davids on the staff. So it was easier just to call me Ghost. And it's funny even now because I'm not with the paper now, but people who call me Ghost, I know they know me through the paper or golf. Everybody else knows me by my real name. And one of the funniest stories is when my wife, Tracy, worked at the paper too, she would call me Ghost at the paper and David at home. Because that's what everybody did.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Situations where people didn't know my real name. In fact, they would bring new people around and start to introduce me. I said, don't even bother with my real name. They just call me Ghost. So everybody's loved that nickname.
Perfect. So for people that don't know, David's been writing at the Augusta Chronicle since 1978, which is pretty phenomenal. I think the numbers I put together here, David, you've written nearly 2,000 Masters stories and the lead on every Masters since 1987. I think it's 152 rounds now. So sort of give us a sense of why you've had that longevity covering that tournament, and that's what you're known for.
I guess it might even go back to my nickname, is that I always keep a low profile. I don't get into politics. I just try to do my job. And fortunately, that whole streak of writing leads, I've never been sick during that time. I've never been like pulled off with a beat because, hey, we want to try somebody else, which happens. So I'm really proud of that streak because I don't know how many people have a streak that long.
You've written more about the Masters than anybody ever. And I can't be scientific on the exact number, but I don't have any doubt that's the case. And you're talking about the streak. It involves a lot of play-by-play for golf, of course, but there's a couple stories that are really interesting to me. David, in 1991, wrote a story about the sale of Cliff Roberts' gun. Cliff Roberts in 1977, the original chairman at Augusta National, co-founder of the club, committed suicide on site at Augusta National. Cut to 1991, David wrote a story about Frank Christian and Charles Young, who were the photographer and security director at Augusta National. They lost their jobs because a gun ended up on auction that supposedly Cliff Roberts committed suicide with. So what's unusual to me about this story is, number one, you talked to Frank Christian, you talked to Charles Young, you talked to Howard Harden, you talked to Jim Armstrong, who at the time was the general manager at Augusta National. And that's, you wouldn't have that opportunity now, I won't think, to talk to many of those folks. But you talked to all of them. And what's even more interesting to me is the Augusta Chronicle byline above it. I've never seen this before, had a copyright symbol for this story. That's how well thought of your reporting was on this. So maybe give us a sense for how you got wind of this happening and what the detail was on the story of the Cliff Roberts gun.
Okay, there was a little blurb. It probably was 2 paragraphs in a golf magazine about this. We call it the suicide gun that Clifford Roberts had. And it didn't seem to be a big deal. Like, it had been in this auction catalog in Japan, because in Japan, of course, suicide is not frowned on like it is here. So Clifford Roberts committed suicide. They would want his gun or something touching him. So anyway, my boss said, I don't know if it was John Fish, or was John Fish there?
Yes. Okay.
He might have been the guy who brought it up. He said, look into this. But it was just a little bitty story. And so I started calling people, and it was like a detective story. I'd call all these people and they'd lead me to the next guy. And they'd say, wow, nobody's ever called me about this before, because this is like years later. And so I tracked all these people down, and then we had an assistant managing editor named Ed McGranahan, who helped me put the story together, like the structure of it. And I always give him credit for encouraging me. It took, he took me off of my other stuff to let me work on this story. And then it turned out that Frank Christian got fired. He was the club's official photographer, because Young, the security guard, all this stuff, a bunch of stuff had gone up for like auction among the club, like silverware and stuff. He knew that gun was the Clifford Roberts gun, but nobody else did. So he sold it to Frank Christian, saying, do not ever do anything with this gun. That's a condition. You just have to keep it. And Frank Christian sold it to put it on this Japanese auction site. And that was a story. And
what's interesting to me about this story is, number one, why in the world the gun that he committed suicide with was still around. It should have been gotten rid of years before. I just thought that was such an unusual piece. And you did such a good job of talking to all these people, all the people that were within the story. They were quoted. And as I recall back in the day, and this doesn't exist anymore either, we could call Howard Harden at his Michigan home in the off season. He'd answer the phone.
Well, what happened was he had this secretary, Catherine Murphy. Yes. He would call her every day when he was in St. Louis, what's going on? And I knew if I could call her in the morning and ask her a question to relay to Howard Harden, or get him to call me, and he'd do it. My boss at the time, Billy Morris, who we'll talk about later, I'm sure, he had talked to Howard Harden about the fact that I was looking into this, and Howard Harden told me he wasn't going to talk to me about it. But right. I didn't know that, but Howard did. And so then Billy goes to Howard, Billy goes to me, and he says, you must have made up that stuff, because Howard Harden said you weren't going to talk to you. And I said, well, no, he talked to me. So, but you couldn't do that today.
Oh, unbelievable. Great bit of reporting. And now I'm going to cut to another story, which is just as fascinating to me. Is in 2022, David wrote the story about how the pimento cheese sandwiches are made. And just fascinating about the fact that, each sandwich has got to weigh 4.25 ounces, There's 40 tables in a room across the street from Augusta National with 7 workers at each table. They're making like 6,000 or 7,000 sandwiches overnight, about 100,000 sandwiches a night. It's just unbelievable. People always are intrigued with things at Augusta National and pimento cheese sandwich. So give us a sense for how this came about and your reporting on that story, if you would.
Well, to me, this was always been the holy grail story because nobody could get it. Nobody would talk about it. The club wouldn't talk about it. The workers were told, apparently, except for the one I talked to, knew not to talk to the media about it. And I would always been trying to find stuff. They used to make the sandwiches in cafeterias at the high schools, elementary schools, because they were out of school that week. And then they moved. When I got a hold of this guy, I had a feeling they'd moved it to this old grocery store on Washington Road across from the National. And they had all these blinds you couldn't see in it. I walked over there, in fact, and I'd look in there, you couldn't see a thing. But I got a hold of this guy who was out of town. He was from Ponte Vedra, maybe, Doug. And he was like telling me everything. He was excited about being there. They just called him up at the last minute, and he's getting paid and staying with a friend of his dad's. And he just told me everything. And then I was like, I think he might get in trouble for doing this. So I sat on the story for 2 days, waiting to hear from him or his dad say, no, this is not a good idea. Nothing ever happened. John Gojic, who was my boss at the course, he said, well, that's a great story, but you got to get a comment from Augusta National. Even if they don't say anything, but you got to let them know that you're looking into this and what do they want to say about it. So I went up to the PR person and told her, Regina, and she said, oh, we can't comment on that. That's all I needed. So then we got the story.
Yeah, I think this is sort of a slice of life for Augusta National because there's so many volunteers that do so many things you're not aware of. And making the pimento cheese sandwich, you're not giving away the recipe for it, but how it's made is even more intriguing. This across the street, and they make it there, and how many they make, and delivering it on site. It's that some people cannot go to the Masters unless they have a pimento cheese sandwich. So that's very intriguing.
And another thing is they've moved since then. They don't make them there now. I don't know where they do, but the story was about, the other sandwiches too, but the pimento cheese was the one. They really put a lot of effort into that. They even would use a ruler to measure how much pimento cheese to put on each sandwich. So that would slow them down, but they wanted to make it perfect. And I really couldn't believe I got that story, and because I never thought I'd get it.
Oh, it's unbelievable. A lot of this goes back to something folks don't know about you very much and very unusual. You probably have the trifecta here, David. You've caddied at Augusta National, you've played at Augusta National, and you've written about Augusta National. I can't think of anybody else that's done that. But David caddied at Augusta National for about 2.5 years. He moonlighted as a caddy while he was working at the Chronicle in his early years. So maybe tell our folks that are listening or watching here about how you got that gig and what you learned when you caddied out there.
Yeah, so this was the late 80s, and the caddies, the course passed a rule that the caddies could not get tips anymore from the members or the guests. And that was their livelihood, the tips, not just the standard fee for a loop around the course. They couldn't make a living. So I wasn't involved in this, but apparently Augusta National reached out to the community to say, hey, anybody might want a caddy, let us know. And so a friend of mine did that. He got there and he called me up. He said, all you got to do is just come out, just say you play golf, and you'll get your caddy card. He said that you don't need to know no experience or anything other than on caddying. So I did that. And I mean, I caddied for like the CEO of Exxon. I saw George Schultz out there. But the thing was, and I learned how to read the greens. Like number 8, it's got a triple break or double break from the front to back. And I never knew that before. But the thing is, when I was working there, our boss, Billy Morris, is a member. And there was a rule at the Chronicle that you couldn't have an outside job like freelance unless you had it approved by them. And I I said, they're going to shoot this down. So I didn't say anything. So I was always on the lookout for him out there. I didn't want him to see me. So I saw him up there once by the clubhouse. I was caddying that day, but not in his group. And I turned my back to him so he couldn't see me. But apparently he'd already seen me. He came back down. He came down there and said, David, you're out here caddying? And I thought I was going to get fired.
Yep.
And he said, that's very industrious of you. So
that's unbelievable. Maybe what was it like being a caddy there? You know, putting that uniform on every day. That's something that you probably cherish, the fact that you did that for a while. And did some of those old veteran caddies take you under their wing and teach you sort of how to do this?
some of them did. Most of them were kind of resentful because these were white guys who were coming in.
Yeah.
And they always had been just blacks. And it wasn't that we're taking their money because the other guys had left. They needed help. But I can't really remember. I mean, there was a few of them that I actually became friends with and would see later at the tournament. And a guy named Edward White was a great guy. And
Yeah.
George, I think George Hamilton was his name. But it was, I always said, I go out there, you could go down the old Berkman's Road on the way to the course, and you could look to your right, and you could see through the trees the fourth green.
Yep.
So I would go to caddy. You had to be there about 8 o'clock, and I could look through there and see, yeah, they're already out there. You could see people on the course, and then you'd go up there, and you'd have to wait for a bag. You may not get a bag because you were like low on the totem pole.
Yep.
But I always said, you go out there, it's beautiful days. It was in May most of the time. I would go there on my days off because I always remember the Kentucky Derby was being run that time.
Yep.
And I always said, how can you beat the working conditions out here for a job? And you'd get $35 for 18 holes,
Right.
$10 to balls, $15 to do the par 3. And what you really wanted to do was you wanted to get a group that came in on Friday. They're going to play 9 holes. And then Saturday, they're going to play 36.
Yep.
And Sunday, they play 9 more.
Yep.
You were locked in for probably $200.
Yep. No doubt.
I'd go across the street to this Chinese restaurant, get something to eat, and then come back for the afternoon.
That's awesome.
And then we had the media has a media day after the course closes, right before the course closes in late May. There also was a caddy day. I think this is all changed now, but you had to have caddy at a certain amount of time in order to qualify for caddy day. And so the first year I did qualify. So Jim Armstrong was a general manager. You mentioned him earlier.
Yeah.
He looks at the list of caddies. He's like, wait a minute, this Westin guy, he's on the media list too. He can't do both. And Dave Spencer was one of the co-pros who was buddies with him. And he said, look, the guy qualifies both ways. You can't not let him do it. So I'm the only guy, I'm sure, who ever played media day and caddy day the same year.
No doubt. So you mentioned the 8th green had an unusual break. What's the biggest intel you learned as a caddy out there about the golf course?
Well, they always talk about everything, like the first holes up there are on a hill. Everything breaks toward Ray's Creek on the back 9. And it's true. It really is true. But there's so many subtle breaks. I was thinking about what's the most memorable shot I've ever seen there. And it was actually a putt on number 8 that Rory Sabatini made whenever he was playing. It must have had like 5 breaks in it. It was about an 80-foot putt, and it went in the hole.
Yeah. There you go. So caddy intel. David, also, you grew up playing a golf course in Augusta that's pretty cool. The Patch, the Augusta Municipal course, which I first played with you, and the golf course was so unique. It had a par 3 on the back 9 that intersected with the runway at the local golf course. And if you teed off on that hole at the right time, you could almost bang your tee shot off the side of an airplane that was coming into land or taking off. So maybe describe the patch during its heyday when you were going there playing, what the golf course was like, and just give a sense of what the characters that played out there were like.
Yeah, there was a lot of gambling because it was a short course, probably 6,000 yards. You could play it. I mean, I had a regular partner, and we'd play 18 holes in 2 hours and 30 minutes.
Walking, right?
Walking.
Yeah.
But it's funny because it has some really good holes. It was built in 1928, maybe 26.
Yep. Yep.
But there's some really outstanding holes there. And I always told people it was never in good shape because the city ran it. He leased it to a guy who paid $1 a year for the lease. And it's his money that he'd be putting into the course. So he wasn't going to put a whole lot in. So you had a lot of hard pan. I learned how to hit all these hard pan shots that screw people up now.
Yep.
They don't see it. But I always remembered, I said, because of these great holes, that it was like a little Marion.
Yep.
That if somebody ever came, I mean, I thought this 30 years ago. I said, if somebody ever came in here, bought this course, and put money into it with these holes, it would be unbelievable.
Well, your take on the golf course is spot on about hard pan. I never forget the first time I played with you, the par 5 first hole had a real slope from right to left. And on a dry day, if you hit it up the right-hand side and caught the slope, the ball's going to roll like 100 yards at least. So it was really almost like playing golf in Scotland instead of Augusta. So that was really neat. Maybe give me your perspective since you're a veteran of the patch. What do you think about what the golf course has become, what you've seen there in Augusta, and what do you think it'll be like when it opens in the spring?
I had mixed feelings about that because, because of the Augusta National connection, they put millions of dollars into this. And I mean, they sodded the fairways. Who sods fairways?
Right.
And so like people are it's a public course. So people from all over the country are going to want to come and play this because probably the closest they'll ever come to playing Augusta National because it's built by Augusta National or renovated. So they recently came out, there's a website called the Patch Plan or something like that, that they even put the green fees on there, what it's going to be, when it opens in April, right before the Masters. And they're like $50, $55, but they have a stipulation that it's cheaper for in-town members, in-town residents, and I think they also get a priority on the tee times. I just worried that the tee times will be booked up and people from the area won't get to enjoy it as much. Like now, before they closed it down, you could just walk out there anytime and play.
Yeah.
And I remember it would be like $15 or $20 to walk 18 holes, not that long ago.
It's really a cool concept, and it's a combination of Augusta Tech and Augusta National and the First Tee getting together. And if you're a local student at Augusta Tech and you want to get into agronomy, working on a golf course, that's going to be the place you're going to go probably end up working. And I think that's really cool. And then, of course, Tiger's building a little really short course up there at the entrance, which will be fun to play. And there's even a rumor going around, David, that Forest Hills Golf Course, which is a historic golf course basically across the street from there, that eventually Augusta National will control that and redo that and use that in some capacity. What would your thoughts be on that happening?
I've heard that and I've looked into that, even not officially as a reporter, but just because I walk up there with my dog and I talk to all the guys on the cart guys. And I was like, hey, I heard Augusta National bought Forest Hills. And they said, no. But there's a kind of a tip-off that Forest Hills is run by this Bobby Jones Management Company, which is, I think, in Virginia. You might know.
I think it's in Atlanta, actually. Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
That same management company is running the Patch now.
Yeah. Yep.
And so the theory I've been going on and trying to see this happen, if this is happening, is Augusta National has the Women's Amateur Champions Retreat. They have to rent that course for thousands of dollars for the whole week. Well, they don't want to do that. So they might want to buy Forest Hills, have the Women's Amateur there. There's this gigantic field where this hotel used to be when that was a resort that I go up to all the time, walk my dogs. And I've heard that they were going to build housing there because Augusta National owns that property.
Yep.
They would build housing there for the women's amateur. The girls could stay there and just walk right to the course.
Yep.
So that could happen. And this is like the 5th year of a 5-year contract with Champions Retreat for that tournament.
Yep. Yep. So things point toward that. I agree. You mentioned Billy Morris earlier. Billy Morris, the publisher of the Augusta Chronicle forever and ever. That land is adjacent to Forest Hills. He owned for a number of years, and he sold that to Augusta National within the last year. So that rumor is pretty hot. But this podcast is more than likely called the Tournament Podcast, and a lot of that name comes from the fact that Billy Morris has got this Southern drawl, very much just like in Augusta, and the word tournament, the word is pronounced tournament in Augusta. And so, David, you gave me the best advice ever at one of my first masters when I was a sports editor of the Chronicle. There were these advertisements in the newspaper, and it had a picture of Billy in there, and he wasn't aware of it. And he saw me at Augusta, and he said, "Ward, where does this advertisement come from?" And I called into the office and explained that Mr. Morris had objected to this ad in the paper, and you heard the conversation, and you said you need to go play by the Billy rule. And the Billy rule was if you were at the Masters walking around and you saw Billy Morris, you went the other way because you didn't want him asking you questions about what was going on with the coverage that day. So I've always thought a lot of Mr. Morris and thought about you, and I'll never forget that tip that you gave me. So that's pretty cool there. We're talking about a lot of changes in Augusta golf and not just Augusta National. Since you've been there since '78, even before that, growing up there, in your view, how has the Masters and Augusta National changed? Maybe give me a sense what it was like when you first started going. What's different about it now?
There's more rules. When I used to go as a kid, I remember going there when I was probably in 4th grade. And then we moved away and I came back for 11th and 12th grade and I would go. And it's funny because when I was in 11th grade, I didn't know I was going to become a sports reporter, but you could take in any kind of chair and I always sit behind the 12th green because you can see 11 green, 12 tee, all of the par 3, and then you can see them tee off on 13. And you could bring in any chair. Now you have to have one of their chairs that you buy. But I would just sit there, and there was a guy from the Cincinnati paper who would always come by and interview the patrons. And I thought, not thinking I'd ever be that guy, but I ended up going there and talking to people, like when Jordan Spieth had that meltdown in 2016.
Yep.
I remember going there in 2017 because he was about to play the hole and just talking to the people about, is he going to be able to get it over the water after what happened?
Yep. Yeah.
So, it wasn't that hard to get a ticket either back then. Even when I came back in the late 70s, you could buy a practice round ticket at a booth downtown or at the club. And then one year, you might know, they went to a lottery because the previous year, the word had gotten out around the country that you could just show up and get a practice round ticket.
Yep.
That year, there was 100,000 people out there at least on a practice round day when there's usually 40.
Yep.
And the bathroom lines were unbelievable, concession lines. That was the end of that. But that's how it changed, is that first Arnold Palmer's won in the late 50s that put it on the map.
Yep.
And then I think Jack and Tom Watson and that crowd became bigger because of them.
No doubt. My perspective on it has always been, when people ask me that question, is number one, it's the same golf course every year, same place, but there's these little secrets there. One green's been redone, add another pin placement, a tee box has been moved. Some of the things they don't tell you, but the players who play there, they notice these little subtleties, and it's always interesting to reveal a change in the golf course or a new venue. Like next year, the players will have this facility they'll stay in over by the range. So there's a lot of things that change there that you have to, when you get there, you have to see what's changed about it. So that's my perspective on that.
One year, there's what they call a tributary to Ray's Creek in front of the 13th green.
Right.
Well, it used to be if you hit into there, you were pretty much gone. I mean, you were going to have to take a drop. One year, they kind of bottled it up a little bit and didn't tell you this, but the players were like, hey, you can hit out of there now. You're going to have to get wet and you might hit a rock. But that was something they never told you about. But the players would bring that up, and they would bring up the fact that they mow the fairways toward the tees so the ball doesn't roll as far. Stuff like that. And every year now, I don't know how long it's been going on, but they redo 2 greens. And so they have the blueprint and everything, but it won't be exactly the same breaks. It's impossible. And Ben Crenshaw, back when he was playing, he was always a great guy to ask what's different because he would know.
No doubt. Well, let's cut to something else here. Maybe give me some background here on your love of the Allman Brothers band and how many times you've seen them play and why you really like them.
I like them because, I don't know, it's something about their music. It's a mixture of rock, blues, jazz, country. And when you put it all together, and it, especially in concert, which I've seen them over 50 times. Of course, they are not around anymore, but just the feeling you get coming from the stage, it just makes you feel so good, so happy. And I remember when I was in high school in Atlanta, I was a sophomore in high school. My brother was older, he had a car, so he'd drive me to school every day with him. And he had 3 8-track cassettes. He had one by The Who, one by the Rolling Stones, and the Allman Brothers.
Yep.
And we played those 3 8-tracks for a whole school year. That's all we had. And the Allman Brothers, but the other 2 were great. The Who Live at Leeds, Rolling Stones, Sticky Fingers. But It was Allman Brothers' second album called Idlewild South. It had Elizabeth Reed and Midnight Rider on it. And it's like that just, and then there was this free-form radio station in Atlanta called WPLO. It was back in the days when people were playing these really long songs and they didn't have DJs, you just play these songs. And so I would listen to it all the time. And then I later found out, it's like, I really like that song. Hey, that was the Allman Brothers.
Yep.
They never announced it.
So let me ask you, if CBS decided all of a sudden we're going to dump the soundtrack that they always play of the piano, that song, what Allman Brothers song would you choose to be the soundtrack for Augusta National and the Masters?
Probably this instrumental. It's called In Memory of Elizabeth Reed.
Mm-hmm.
It's got like 4 different changes in it, and it's a really happy song. Or Jessica would be a good song.
Yep. Okay, cool. There we go. We'll propose that to the folks at CBS. That'd be good. All right, we're going to do these quick hitters, David, and these are about a dozen of these, and just give me your thoughts on this. What's your favorite and least favorite holes at Augusta National?
Favorite would be number 12 because there's so much drama at that hole. In fact, I did a story a couple of years ago because for like the previous 4 or 5 years, ever since Jordan Spieth screwed up number 12, 2016, that hole had not been pivotal in determining the winner. So I went to the players and I said, hey, why do you think this is? And hey, maybe they should lengthen the hole. Or no, I didn't say, why do you think this is? I didn't say lengthen the hole. But when I asked Vijay Singh that question, he said they need to lengthen the hole.
Yeah.
And people went crazy. Like, you can't change that. Fred Ridley even, I got him talking about it. He said, you can't do that. You can't change the Mona Lisa.
Yep.
And just so happened that year, it was a pivotal hole. I had written that hadn't been, but then it was. So I don't think I have a least favorite. I don't like some of the things they've done to lengthen, like number 5.
Right.
It's too long. And number 7, they've lengthened that, but it's okay. But they just have gone crazy with the length on some of these holes.
I'm like you. I love the 12th hole. One of the reasons is it's the same hole as it was when the golf course was originally built. That's a pretty cool feel. And the second is I dislike the seventh hole because I think the seventh hole was designed to be more of a shorter par four, and now it's a lengthy par four, and I just think it's completely out of context. So I don't care for that hole. So that's my take. All right.
Well, you can go through the media guide, and they do tell you this, each hole, how it's been changed over the years. And there's only
Yep.
one that has never been changed, and that's number 12.
Yes, sir. I agree. All right. If they told you could buy only one thing in the Augusta National Golf Shop, what would that be?
I guess one of their hats, because they have, unless you go there in person, you don't realize there's like each year there's a couple of different styles, but there's always, you probably have 30 different hats you could wear.
At least 30. Yeah.
And some of them have the date on them, some of them don't. You actually had a hat that had 1931 on it.
19, yeah, I think I did. One of the original ones. They went back to the original logo for 1
I
year.
mean, before the tournament had started, but the course had opened.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. Okay. If I was, since I'm somebody coming to Augusta and I want to play golf, what are your 3 favorite golf courses you would tell them to play? Augusta National can't be one of them because that's not an option.
Yeah. I mean, even the old patch, I guess people will start calling it the old patch. It just was, I'll never forget, I was playing with a guy, I joined up with him. He was from out of town. We were playing number 7. It's a cool little par 3 down the hill. And he turned to me and he said, "Man, this course, it's a sporty little number." So I would say that. And then I really like Forest Hills because there's still some touches of Donald Ross there.
Yeah.
And then the third one would be Goshen, because this famous architect Ellis Maples did a number of courses here. And
Right.
he did Goshen. It's got some great holes there. And
No
it's
doubt.
never been in the best of shape, but maybe I just haven't been there in a while.
Those are great. 3 favorite places to eat in Augusta for somebody that's coming from out of town. Doesn't have to be fancy. It's just got to be places to eat. Yep.
I tell all the sports writers, if they ask me, especially their first year there, I said, you got to go down to downtown, the lower end of Broad Street, to the sports center.
Yep.
It's a dive. They have mugs of beer, fish bowls of beer, they call them, but they have the best hamburgers, grilled onions. Every day in the morning, they go get fresh meat at the farmer's market. They might run out, too bad, but that's just a classic place. It's right next to this Italian place named Luigi's.
Yep.
That is kind of much more upscale, and that's where a lot of golfers and Masters go to eat. But I would go to the Sports Center, and then let's see. There's Vallarta's is a good Mexican restaurant here.
Yep.
They have about 3 locations, and then I would say there's one downtown called the Boll Weevil. It's got a lot of local. That's what I want. That's what I like. The local restaurants.
No
It's got
doubt.
a lot of recipes, and they have this whole room of nothing but pastries and cakes. That people always say you can just go in there and just look around and you'd gain 3 pounds.
All right. But when you go to the Masters, pimento cheese or egg salad?
I don't like pimento cheese at all. And I actually came around to, I do like it now, like dipping it on chips.
Okay.
But as far as the white bread, no, I go with I used to go to the Masters Club was my favorite. And now I've gone to the chicken salad on wheat.
Yep. That's good. I agree. Okay.
That's my favorite.
Any routines you have when you go to the Masters, when you cover the tournament? Do you do anything in particular?
Not like the one thing I used to do, there was a couple of reporters, Tim Guidra from Savannah and Chip Towers from Athens years ago. Well, Tim still comes, but we would always, on the Wednesday before the tournament, we would always walk the course, especially late in the day. We'd have work done, and the fans would be leaving, and we just walk the course. It wouldn't take that long, I remember being down on number 12 once, and security guards like, "What are you guys doing down here?" It's like, "We're just walking the course."
Yeah.
So that was a nice tradition. But now I mentioned John Gojic was the managing editor or news editor, whatever he was. He always talked about the coffee that they had. The coffee's always been good there. And so I always first thing I do is I get a cup of coffee and my sandwich of choice, and then I take a picture of it and send it to him. And I'll say, "First cup of coffee of the week."
Is there a secret place to watch golf at Augusta National you recommend for people to go so they could see everything?
I mean, what I mentioned earlier, behind the number 12 is good. And then there's big bleachers behind there. But the problem is you're too far away to really see where the ball goes on number 12, unless you have binoculars. But I really like those bleachers they built on 15, on both sides of the green. The ones on the right are new. And I noticed something this year. I was asking some people how long this has been going on, but I don't remember seeing it. Maybe you do. But like those bleachers on the right of 15, they now let fans in a single row stand in front of those bleachers. There's a rope. And there's another hole, I noticed that too. It's like, I don't know how you get in there, but you're like right there on the ground, but single file. You can see them in front of the bleachers. And I went back and looked at some old pictures trying to figure out when this changed. And another change I don't like is Nick Fowler used to say that he loved the Masters because they were just inside the ropes. It was just the caddy and the player.
Yep.
Even the rules officials would be outside the ropes. Now, I also look back at this. Now there's cameramen and all kind of people in the fairway with the players. And it looks so funny because I'm so used to, I mean, that's what you see on any other tournament, but the Masters is always different. It's like,
yeah, I agree.
Nick Fowler, in fact, I'm going to do a story next year about talk to him because he used to love that, and now it's not the case anymore.
Favorite Masters in history?
I used to say 1987 because that was the first time I wrote the lead, and that Larry Mize won it, and he was a local guy. And
Yep.
Back in the day, they give you a player, and you just have to follow that player every day. So he was local, so I would follow him every day. I remember after Saturday's round, he was probably 4 shots back of Seve and Greg Norman. And it's like nobody gave him a chance. And so I was walking to the parking lot with him, interviewing him. I'm the only guy interviewing the guy who ends up winning the Masters the next day.
Yep.
But if I had to say, I would put the 86 Masters with Jack because I've never seen reporters. Back then, the media center was down this hill by number 1, and the 18th green was on top of the hill. I've never seen reporters like Art Spander running up to the 18th green to see this history being made of Jack Nicklaus winning the Masters at age 46.
Mine's 1975, just because the back and forth between Weiskopf, Miller, and Nicklaus, and then the TV broadcast is unbelievable with those guys talking about what's happening and so forth. So that 1975 is mine. Do you have a favorite Masters shot in history? Does one come to mind that is particularly memorable for you?
I do. It's like nobody would ever remember this, but one year John Houston was leading the first round of the Masters. And it was because on the 18th hole, he hit a terrible drive. It ended up over the magnolia trees into the 10th fairway. And he holed that out for an eagle to give him a 1-shot lead. I think he shot 69. But the headline in the Chronicle was something like, "Houston has landed."
Houston, the eagle has landed.
Yes.
John Fish wrote that headline, actually. So that's pretty interesting.
Speaking of headlines, there's only one headline in the history of Augusta Chronicle that the winner's name was not in the headline, or his nickname.
Okay. What
You
was
know
that?
what it is?
No.
When Nick Fowler won the 97 Masters, was it the 97? 97, right?
Yeah.
The headline was, because all we've been talking about all week was Greg Norman. He's going to finally do it and got a big 6-shot lead. And, you know, his nickname was a Great White Shark. So the headline in the Chronicle didn't mention Nick Faldo, who won the tournament. It said, Shark skinned.
Yep. I remember that. Same headline writer, John Fish. There you
And then,
go.
you know, the subhead mentioned Faldo and all this,
Yep.
but that's the only time I ever won a Golf Writers Award for deadline writing for that
Mhm.
story that
Gotcha.
Greg Norman was
How about that?
defeated.
All right. Last quick hitter for you here. Have you played Augusta National? How many times and what's your best round?
You know, we would play it every year for the media day.
Yeah.
And then I got to play that other time with Caddy Day. And it's well over 20. And I was playing good back in the day. And I shot an 82 once from the members' tees. And then one year, me and these other guys, they were good golfers. They said, hey, we teed off from the members' tees on the first hole. And we said, let's play from the back tees from number 2 on, just to see what it would be like for the players
Yeah.
in the tournament. And they caught us about the 5th hole, but it was kind of interesting to see their perspective from
Yep.
way in the back. But one of my most memorable times playing there was Billy Morris, the publisher. He called me one day and he said, I want you to be my guest. I got a couple other guys and we want you to join us. And so he gave me the date and I said, oh man, I'm going on a cruise that week with my mother that,
Right.
I can't make it. And he said, oh, that's okay. We'll do it some other time. 2 months later, he called, you ready? Let's go.
Yeah.
And it was so different because there weren't many people. It was not anywhere near the Masters tournament. And there was
Right.
nobody on the course, hardly. You didn't have to wait like you do all the other times I played for your shots. You went in the clubhouse and had a leisurely lunch, and then you went, back out and played the back 9. And I always admired Mr. Morris for remembering. You always hear that. The check's in the mail, or I'll remember you later. And he didn't forget.
That's awesome. Last one here. I recall when you went to Florida on your pre-Masters work one time, and Nick Price saw you and he called you the face of spring. What was your reaction to that when he said that? And I'm surprised that nickname didn't go forward also.
Well, I mean, so the Chronicle would always send me and the columnist usually to Florida for 2 or 3 weeks to do our special 80-page preview section. And we talk to all the contenders and former champions, do profiles and do big takeout stories. And this was back in the early 90s, maybe, when Nick Price was winning everything. He was winning the British and PGA. And he and I just we had a connection. Same with Ben Crenshaw. They knew my name. A lot of these guys now, they wouldn't even know these writers' names. But they knew that when they saw me and the columnists down there, like a month before the Masters, that it was coming. And so was the good weather.
Yep.
So he said whenever he saw me, I was the face of spring.
David, thanks for doing this, man. We could sit here for hours and talk about master stories and Augusta and music and everything like that. But thanks for doing it. And for folks watching here, David has his own parking spot in the press building parking lot just because of covering 40 masters. They are indebted to the written word, and so they put names of people that have been there 40 years on their special parking place in the parking lot, and that you're well worthwhile for you, and that's so cool. And thanks for doing this. We appreciate it.
Yeah, one more thing about that parking space is that's one thing Augusta National has always prided itself on is the written word, promoting the written word and looking out for the print people, even though now, we're in the minority out there, but they love the stories we can tell through print.
Oh yeah.
The
No doubt.
video is not going to be able to tell.
Our first podcast guest showed both ends of the spectrum of going to the Masters. David Westin is riding a streak of 156 consecutive Masters rounds, writing the lead story for the Augusta Chronicle. That's a streak that's going to be unparalleled. Nobody will surpass that. It goes all the way back to when Larry Mize, the Augustan, chipped in 1987 to beat Greg Norman in a playoff. Quite the streak, and David will be going into his 47th Masters this spring. Other end of the spectrum gives the two amateurs we talked with, Mason Howell and Hamilton Coleman. Both of them will room together. Georgia football is used to having the best recruiting class in the country. They've got the best golf class in the country with those two. And you add Drew Woolworth of Oregon, who will also room with them. That's quite the trio coming in to lift the Bulldogs up so they can compete with the best in the country in college golf. Additionally, Hamilton is scheduled to participate in the Corn Ferry Tour event, which is sponsored by Club Car, the last week of March in Savannah, Georgia. This will be his first professional event playing as an amateur. 9 days after that, he's got to report to Augusta National to work on the driving range while his pal Mason Howell gets ready to play in the Masters that week. Both of them will play in what's called the Sage Valley Junior Invitational. Second week of March at Sage Valley, which is located about 20 miles from Augusta National. It's meant to be a carbon copy of Augusta National. It's probably the best run junior golf tournament in the world. So they'll compete there side by side with each other. That's the second week of March. Also in that field will be Charlie Woods, Tiger Woods' son, who just recently committed to Florida State. He'll be playing against those guys and the best juniors in the world. So when you go to the Masters, you might be a first timer or you might be going your 47th time, but the experience is still awesome.